Sort of.
Three.
It's trying to go, but I'm admitting Patty.
Looks like it's working.
Ah, there we go. Sort of.
Hey, Shane.
It's trying
Hello.
admitting Patty. Looks like it's
Hey
working.
Blair, I was unable to get to the comments section on my computer for last week's video to put a comment in, and I don't know what was going on with that.
I don't know what was going on with that either. I attempted the same thing. I tried to comment while things were live and do things, but no joy.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going
All right.
Hey, Patty.
Hey, trying to figure out where my lights are. Here we go. There we go. Okay.
Yep.
So welcome everybody. I think we're about ready to get started. Blair, do you have everything recording that needs to be?
I believe so. I am live on YouTube and I am recording on Fathom. So
Well,
there,
welcome to Christy. She's joining us on YouTube today. I saw Jane. Oh, there you are. Okay.
yep,
So
she's
Jane, it's good to have you back with us. And Michael,
Thank
Leslie,
you.
good to see you. Missed you last week.
mhm.
Yeah, we had a holiday in Banff.
Nice.
Okay.
That would be a
So,
nice holiday. Yep.
Yeah,
yes, it absolutely would. So Blair, are we ready to get started?
We are. Unfortunately, I just pulled up the wrong It's not April 22nd, but I pulled up the wrong one. So,
Yes, it's May 13th.
yeah, just bringing it up now. Okay.
Let me know when we're good to go.
We are good to go. You can start, and Colin and you are here. So feel free to.
Okay. Well, just a quick announcement on Blair's Insider Notes. You can get all the historical and ongoing notes for the Blair Dunkley experience starting with episode 318 for $25 a month or $300 a year. The link for the Insider Notes, Colin, I don't know if do you have the ability to put that into chat for people?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
So
I
it is
do as well.
blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes for those of you on YouTube. You do get all of them from episode 318 forward, and tonight is episode 344. So there's a lot of historical data there, as well as the fact that Blair expounds on what we talk. Expounds. He makes it bigger than what we do online. So there is more there than what you get here. My name is Patty, and I want to welcome you to the 344th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we discuss mind models. Mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of Mind Models. My name's Patty. I'm a certified Mind Model Method coach. Your co-host tonight is Colin Judith, also a certified Mind Model Method coach. Congratulations to Colin.
Yep.
So the BDE tonight is Blair's free gift to you, and it's an opportunity to learn, experience, and practice mind models in a safe real-world environment. Personally, my models helped me overcome more than a decade of depression. They've positively impacted every area of my life, including my relationship with myself. So we look forward to learning with you tonight and welcome you to the BDE. Colin, would you like to take it from here?
I would. Thanks, Patty. Hello, everyone. This will be my first night kind of leading some discussion, and I'm very excited to do so because tonight's mind model of focus, safety versus comfort, is probably the one I've gotten the most mileage out of personally. So I'll be happy to share some about that. But I looked at the notes from last week. I was not here last week, but I saw that they were about memory. And for those of you who don't know, am still a learning and memory coach for several years. I've done a lot with memory, digging into people's brains, how they're all wired up. And I was really bummed that I missed that, but I thought that I might just start out tonight by jumping into that a little bit, actually. So going off script a little bit. Hopefully that's all right, Blair.
Totally,
If you,
thumbs up.
yeah. So has anybody ever kind of wished that they could kind of open up their brain, dig inside of it, and see how everything was wired up to get a better understanding of themselves and their memory and everything like that? I'm getting a nod from Michael. Patty gave me a smile there. Blair, hand up. Yeah. So one thing that I've realized in memory coaching, I'd be working with people and trying to figure out what connections are there, what connections can be made, and I realized we actually can see the connections in our brain. We can open it up and we can look inside, and it's actually pretty easy to do. So I thought we might jump into a quick thought experiment here, if everybody's with me on that.
I am.
I am.
Excellent. All right. So I want you to do is we're going to run some simulations here. You can close your eyes, whatever is going to help you to visualize and imagine yourself running through different scenarios in your mind. All right. So if you can do it with your eyes open, that's impressive. Most people can't. If you need to close them, that's good too. All right. So real simple. First, I just want you to run the simulation and imagine dancing on a table. And you can give me a thumbs up or a nod when you've got that in your head. Okay, cool. Now I want you to imagine same table, eating off of that table. You imagine that? Okay. All right, so that was simulation one. We've got dancing on a table, eating on a table. Simulation two, here we go. You're on a stage. I want you to imagine jumping on the stage. Give me a thumbs up when you've got that. Okay, we're all jumping on a stage. Now I want you to imagine leaping on a stage. Got that. All right, that's simulation two. Now we're going to run one more simulation here. You're in a coffee shop. I want you to imagine buying a cup of coffee. Got that. All right, now I want you to imagine purchasing a cup of coffee.
Okay.
All right, cool. So that's the three simulations. Coming back together here, you can open your eyes, you can snap out of the matrix. Did you notice anything interesting happening? Anything change over the course of the simulations? Did you catch it? What did you notice?
Well, I'll be a guinea pig, I guess.
Yeah, jump in, Shane.
Well, I mean, may or may not have danced on a table before, so that memory came up. Eating at a table was a Christmas at my grandma's. It wasn't the same table. A stage I had been on before, just jumping up on it and then leaping on it. I was a ballerina. And then, what was the last one?
Cup of
Oh,
coffee.
buying a coffee cup and purchase. I automatically went to the set of Frasier. I was in the TV show Frasier. I was in their
Okay.
I was in their coffee shop buying and purchasing. Like they have the same simulation.
Huh, interesting. Okay. Leslie, I saw you throw a hand up too.
Yeah, I've never danced on a table. Ever.
Were you able to simulate
Well,
it though?
no,
No? Okay, interesting.
no, I couldn't. I just, no, maybe because I don't do it, I don't dance a lot.
Sure.
But I did notice that when you first asked about buying a coffee and then purchasing a coffee, it was the same scene, but it was the same. It was like, okay, I bought my coffee and I'm going on. And then you said purchasing. So I'm turning around and going back to the cash again.
Hmm.
So, and I caught it that it was the same action twice,
Yeah, very good catch.
So that was, that made me think, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Any other observations?
Shannon wrote in the chat that they got progressively more grounded toward a real memory for her as it went on.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must buy a
Yeah.
lot of coffee.
Yeah. I got one. I was like the same, similar to Shannon. It was I don't know. The first one was like I imagine something as if it wasn't really happening, like a simulation, but it
Mhm.
right, but like for her, it got more real as
Huh.
it went on. Like the last one, I could see like as myself doing that, like purchasing the coffee. That confused me. I was like, I bought the coffee, purchased it. I was like, I just did that. That's why I was like, I just did this. I just did that. So yeah, but yeah, it was more intense than the beginning. Beginning, I was like, yeah, look, I'm dancing on like imaginary, like I'm just dancing on a table. Oh, I eat on the table too.
Yeah,
And I
Shane
think,
had no
oh man,
problem
that really
dancing on the
happened
table.
by going to the store. What's that?
Shane had no problem dancing on the table, but it sounds like
Yeah.
he's got some personal experience. Jane, yeah, what's up?
I went from visualizing it of seeing the table and seeing me on it dancing to, so I call that like in the third person versus to becoming in the first person.
Hmm.
That's the perspective that changed for me, was where was I seeing this from? What perspective?
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Awesome. Well, so you all pulled out several valuable things that we can explore a little bit. I'm going to do a quick screen share. I really like to have a whiteboard that I can draw on. I know it's not a common BDE practice, but we'll give it a shot here.
Go for it.
Okay. Okay. Can everybody see this?
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So, first one, Shane, do you mind if I pick on you for a second here? You're muted, Shane.
Absolutely pick away.
Okay, great. So, Shane, can you dance without eating?
I can dance without eating, yes,
Okay, okay. Can you eat without dancing?
for sure.
Okay, great. A plus.
That's
All
a
right,
pretty
so the the first simulation we have dance and eat, and those were fully separable. You're able to behave to them or simulate them completely separately. No problem. The next one, Brent, do you mind if I pick on you?
Yeah, go ahead. If I
Okay,
remember,
so the next one was
jump
jump.
and leap.
Can you jump without leaping?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you leap without jumping?
Ooh. Yeah. Maybe not so much. I mean, I don't know. It's not so much of a clear separation.
Yeah,
They're more closely, almost what is that? Synonyms? They're interchangeable, but in the
sort of.
context of
But
using them.
you actually just pointed out they have an interesting relationship. You can jump without leaping, but leaping without jumping, that's kind of hard to, our
Yeah.
brains don't want to do that. It doesn't
Yeah.
really run that way, right? So they have a different relationship here. It looks kind of like this. Can't leap without jumping. You can jump without leaping, right? All right, so last one here. Patty, do you mind if I pick on you?
No, go for it.
Okay. Patty, can you buy without purchasing?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Can you purchase without buying?
No. When
All
you
right.
put those two words together, my brain just was like, how is this a new thing?
Right. Yeah, and that's what several people observed. It was like, wait a minute, I just did that. How can I do
Yeah.
something else? Blair, you're waving at me.
Yeah,
But
well, what if you can buy without purchasing and purchase without buying?
Okay. Can you do that?
Yeah,
Great. What does that look like?
I'm buying into a concept, an idea.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't buy it, but I bought in.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
And
All right.
the purchase is I purchased it, but I didn't buy like I bought it, but I sure as hell didn't purchase the result I got.
Yeah,
well,
so
I thought
yeah,
that
go
the
ahead, Patty.
example was specific to a cup of coffee.
It was that time, yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
tried to make it extra smushy.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, in this scenario, what we noticed was multiple times it was very difficult to simulate that differently, or it seemed like it was almost like, wait, I just ran this, I'm repeating it again. And so what we're observing in real time is not just linguistic, but it's actually neurological. We're seeing how our brain is wired in real time with those simulations. Dancing and eating are separable behaviors. We see them as totally different things. It's no problem for us to simulate those completely separately. Jumping and leaping, well, we simulate jumping. We don't really think about leaping necessarily, but when you say leap, you almost always think of jump. Kind of can't separate it out. Like neurologically, if you're reaching for that behavior of leaping, you're also going to grab jump in there too. And buy and purchase, especially when it comes to something physical like a cup of coffee, are going to be almost identical for most people. They're going to be overlapping to such a degree that if you try to reach for one, you end up grabbing the other too.
Hmm.
That makes sense. So they're overlapping neural networks. And if you were to look at someone's brain activation as you're running these simulations, you'd probably actually see that lighting up uh, in sort of this sort of pattern. Not as cleanly as I drew it here, but that sort of thing. And so something that I've realized when it comes to mind models that has really helped me in my understanding is that what mind models do is they help us to neurologically separate things, two different things, so we can behave to them separately, or at least a lot of the mind models, especially the ones that are the X versus Y.
Yeah.
You're using compare and contrast and articulation of the differences and the similarities between two things. Your brain is actually able to pull them apart. And you can see this in real time too. If I say, well, Blair actually just did it with buy and purchase. He was able to draw some sort of distinction, find a scenario in which those things don't fully overlap. And so if he reached for those behaviorally in his brain, he might be able to activate that space where they don't overlap and behave to them differently. But we could do this in real time too. So for example, if we go back to that scenario, imagine yourself buying a cup of coffee and then purchasing a cup of coffee. If I just tell you, well, actually buying and purchasing are different things. See, buying is just normal, you exchange money, normal transaction, probably what you've done a million times. But purchasing is actually a really snobby way to buy something. It's like a stuck-up way to buy something. As soon as I tell you that, I'm giving your brain some way to distinguish between the two. And now if I tell you to run the simulation of buying versus purchasing, you're probably going to now start to see them a little bit differently. Did anybody run that as I was talking? Did you
Yeah.
see snobby way of buying? Did that look different? Did it feel different to you?
Mhm.
Change the simulation. Okay, I can't see you guys very well.
The answer is
Were you
yes
able to run
for
that?
me.
Okay, excellent. Okay, perfect. So yeah, when I've been trying to wrap my head around what are mind models and what do they really do? They allow us to separate things behaviorally, disentangle those neural networks so we can operate to one differently than the other. And I wanted to lead with that because when it comes to safety versus comfort, that is the effect that I saw in my life personally. So I'll just share a quick anecdote or my story with this. Some of you have already heard this, but I had social anxiety for basically my whole life, as long as I can remember. And the way that that manifested was any time that I anticipated any sort of social event, whether it was with strangers or with family, people I knew very well, old friends, I would get this feeling in the pit of my stomach, just a little bit of a tightening, a little bit of tension in my shoulders too. I'd feel my heart starting to race a little bit. These are not unusual symptoms. It's a basic stress response, right? And then I started to just practice differentiating safety and comfort. And we'll do that today on the call too. I want to run through that. But as I started to practice that, I just noticed one day. So I go to church pretty regularly, and there's this event in church where they're like, "Hey, stand up and greet the people around you." I always hated it. My whole life, I hated that. I could not stand that. It's my least favorite part. Like, can we just skip it? I don't need to shake their hands, whatever. But I always get that feeling. I'm anticipating it. And then there was just one Sunday where I didn't have that feeling. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I've had that feeling for years, every time, every Sunday. Maybe it's just something I ate this morning, different. I don't know. And then I noticed I was going into a meeting later that week for work where I was going to be leading a presentation. I noticed I didn't have that feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't have the tension in my shoulders. I actually felt excited to go in to this meeting and lead it. It's like, well, that's interesting. Maybe it's something I ate. Maybe I slept better last night. But then as I thought about it, I realized that I had been running every time I started to feel a little bit of a stress response. I'd been practicing for weeks at this point, not knowing what to expect, separating safety from comfort. And as soon as I started to get even a little bit of a stress response, my brain was immediately running this new pattern that I had of identifying, oh, I'm safe. Didn't do it quite like that. We'll talk through that. I want to kind of explore that together. But that was how I first kind of recognized in real life the power that mind models, as simple as they are, can really have in being able to parse the way that we, not just how we think or the words that we use, but how we experience life and how we behave. We can behave to situations differently. So that's my story. But I want to jump into safety versus comfort. And I think the place I'd like to start, Michael, is it all right if I pick on you?
Absolutely.
Michael, what does safety mean to you?
Safety means that I am secure and safe from harm.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Shannon, would you be willing to jump in too?
Safety, for me, on an instinctual level, it's like a peaceful feeling in my gut. Yes, it is my environment. It's, imminent danger is not anywhere in my mind, but to really take that and feel it in my body, it's a peaceful feeling.
Thanks for sharing. Could I get one more? Leslie, would you like to jump in on safety?
Sure. Uh, that
I see you,
physical
Jay. Yeah.
risks have been mitigated. Um, on construction sites, I mean, you always do a safety course. And whenever there's so many hazards, so many things that can happen. The whole thing is to mitigate risk, all the risks that can possibly happen. So you just behave different on a job site. You're always looking around and while you're moving, or if you're moving something, that you're not taking somebody else out by moving something.
Mhm.
So it's just making sure that any physical risk has been looked after.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Jane, I saw you wave at me, and I saw a comment, but I missed it.
I put in the comment, might we want to use a different word than pick on? Because that takes me out of comfort and into unsafe, because it might
Yeah.
be scary. It
Is it
sounds a little
unsafe or uncomfortable?
aggressive. It's just a word choice. But you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Oh, I do. Shane, what were you asking there?
Well, Jane, does the word pick on make you feel physically threatened or are you just uncomfortable?
Well, as a person that grew up with bullying, as in I was the person being bullied, to be picked on has a very specific meaning. So, and as Patty would say, we react to the meaning of words, our meaning of words, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we
we respond to,
behave to the meaning of words. That's a Blair principle, is that we behave to the meaning of words.
right. And so to me, being picked on, the meaning to me is I'm about to do something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Therefore, it may not be a safe zone anymore because it might involve physical violence.
Jane,
So
would you be
that's just
willing
it.
to, yeah, would you be willing to share your meaning of safety?
Well, to me, safety is, well, first is physically, to be physically safe, to be in an environment in which the likelihood of harm is reduced. yes, I know getting into a car is not as safe as flying in an airplane. However, I am reasonably safe in that I understand the logic, the statistics of that safety and whatnot, and therefore I have an element that I can control, which is my own driving. And if I'm a defensive driver and I'm attentive rather than texting and that kind of stuff, it's a relatively safe thing. And I've done it so many times that I can think of how many accidents I've been throughout my lifetime, and the odds are in my favor that I'll be safe. Comfort, I could be perfectly safe, but I could be uncomfortable because my feelings are going into an unknown situation, such as I know that going public speaking, I'm actually okay with public speaking most of the time, but there's always that little bit of nerves right before things begin that I'm a little uncomfortable until I kind of settle down and go, okay, you got this kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Did
totally.
I answer
Thank you
your
for sharing.
question?
You did. You did, and you
Okay.
kicked off the next part of the conversation too, which is comfort. Yeah. Patty, would you be willing to share your meaning of comfort? What does it mean to you?
Mm. Comfort involves a certain amount of peace and predictability. I know what's coming. I know what to expect. I'm able to function within that. So it's a very that's where I find comfort is in some of that predictability, emotional comfort. I'm not talking about physical comfort, but I'm talking about emotional comfort. It's the peace of knowing that I'm in the middle of something that is familiar and I have the equipping to navigate it.
Yeah, you use the familiar. Yeah, I think of that one too. When I think of comfort, familiar, the word that's like the next word that comes into my brain right away.
Mhm.
Familiar.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the idea of like a comfort zone or like a comfort blanket. I don't know, comfort object too. I think of that too. Like especially with my son right now, he has Nala from Lion King. He's got this little stuffed animal. He's just absolutely in love with, carries around with him everywhere. It's like his comfort item. And if he gets upset, first thing he does is run to grab Nala and squeeze her real tight. It's that familiar companion or object. Blair, did you want to weigh in on comfort?
Um, yeah, comfort zone, like you said before. A comforter, like the blanket that's called a comforter, and
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
exactly what it does. And it's got physical attributes, but it's largely emotive in its internal state. Like it it really impacts internal how you perceive what's going on, and especially with yourself.
Mhm.
Because when you're uncomfortable and you're seeking comfort, you'll do physical things to try and find that place of comfort. Um, However, I find that if I can get into a safe place and then focus on my comfort, I can get to feeling safe and comfortable faster. And my discomfort, if I'm uncomfortable, what do I need to change?
Mm.
It's a great indicator of for me, the necessity for change.
Yeah.
So your discomfort, are you saying your discomfort is an indicator that something needs to change?
Yep. Yep. Like I have I'm uncomfortable with what's going on. Um, you know, well, you guys are aware, my hips aren't great. And I go, well, what might I do to change my pain? Like that's physical, but it's also internal physical. It's inside my body. So I go, what would happen if I worked out more and I strengthened the muscles around my hips? Well, lo and behold, the comfort tends to go up and it doesn't tend to hurt as much. And the distress, the emotional distress, the mental discomfort I've been feeling is starting to go away. Because the pain is not and discomfort is not as frequent, and the alleviation of the pain by medication has stopped altogether. So I'm feeling internally more in control and more comfortable. And that's a very strong internal state for me right now.
Mhm.
How does that pair or relate to the discomfort you feel when learning or practicing something new?
Very similarly in a lot of ways, because the exercise is a great metaphor for practicing. Do it daily and build practice. I'm building new ways of being around myself. And the more that I practice that, in one sense, it's a mental pathway to figure out problems. Whatever I'm in, I've got a problem, I'm uncomfortable. And I'm looking at, well, how can I do this more effectively? What can I learn from this situation and evaluate and just ratchet it up a notch or shift it to the left, right, up or down? How can I move this metaphorically in my mind so I can practice that and see if I have greater benefit? It's testing. But over time, I found that going forward and making a test usually gives me a much faster direction to move in that is more applicable for what I'm doing, and generally over time reduces my sense of discomfort. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more thoughts on what happens if we stay in our comfort zones, if we never leave.
Well, for me personally, I don't like being comfortable too long. So I feel stalled out. I feel stuck. I mean, I don't know, you could call it a, uh, um, like a perfect cell where you're trapped and you're imprisoned in this place and you've got everything you want. Well, how come you break out of that? Because it's not quite everything, and you're not growing, you're not changing. I'm not growing, I'm not changing, I'm just staying stagnant. And I don't care for that indefinitely. So that's just me. Um, And a lot of people, well, some people feel stuck in the same spot, but they're comfortable. And so being very comfortable with that, they want everything to stay the same and not to change. And especially the way the world's going these days, everything's changing so fast. So how can I keep up with the pace of change if I'm just comfortable with the way I am? Does that leave me with where I'm at? Is that okay? And then I get a sense of being left behind. And so that doesn't feel good. Then I feel like I've fallen behind. I need to catch up. But how can I get ahead of the curve and do that with a minimum level of comfort, knowing that I'm uncomfortable, but comfortable? Like, some of the people that I've worked with, uber successful people that I've seen. I had a call today with a client of mine, and he's very successful at a very young age. Self-made millionaire, 26 years of age. Um, and he's flying around doing things that are crazy, way beyond his years, what you would normally think. But he's comfortable and enjoys being challenged. And that challenge would normally be a thing that most people would find uncomfortable, yet he enjoys the challenge, the mental exercise, and looking at himself to see what he might be able to improve upon and shift. One of the things that he did in the conversation is get into questions that he can ask himself and others, and found that questioning himself to see where he wants to go and what he wants to do is, it gives him a sense of, he's got a lot of curiosity, and it helps fulfill that sense of curiosity. And he doesn't always enjoy the answers, but he said he definitely enjoys the process. What? You're smiling like crazy. What?
No, just the not enjoying the answers part.
Yeah. Well, it's not always yes. It's not
Yeah,
always
yeah. Well,
no.
it's uncomfortable to, I mean, being curious is almost, I haven't thought about this too much, but I'm thinking about it right now. Curiosity is always inviting a level of discomfort
Yes,
because you
it
might not get
is.
answers that you like.
You're right, and you don't. But at the end of the day, if you stay curious, you get to work through that.
Yeah.
And over time, you get to find ways of moving your brain in such a way that that curiosity starts seeing patterns and pathways. It's like buying in and buying a cup of coffee. You know, um, okay, okay. In my mind, with the cup of coffee thing, I bought my coffee. Did I go to the store to Starbucks to buy my coffee? No, but because I bought my coffee here, where I live. Like literally, that's my living room. Behind me is the kitchen. Well, that's outside, uh, and behind me, I'm pointing to it. But so the other direction is the kitchen, where I've got a coffee machine where I bought my cup of coffee. It was a very metaphorical buy, but it was still a buy. Purchase I had to exchange money for. So I was at Starbucks. So anyway,
So I'm going to shift this briefly. Colin, Brent put a question in the chat that I don't know if you've seen,
Oh, I missed that.
regarding physical safety and emotional safety. I wondered if you could explore that a bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. The coffee thing brings me back to something I did want to try with the group or attempt with the group though with the simulation real quick.
Sure.
So we can run the same sort of simulation with comfort and safety or with any two concepts. So right now in your mind, if you're willing to, you can think, how do I respond to discomfort? If I'm feeling uncomfortable, what does that look like, feel like? and then simulate if I'm unsafe. What does that look like, feel like? How do I behave? Shannon, that was a big reaction. What are you willing to share what came up for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a surprise. I intellectually know the difference between the two words. I've been here for a minute or two. But when you ask me to picture that and then trying to approach it with as an authentic and as uninhibited a mental perspective as I can, like, all right, what does it feel like to be uncomfortable? And I immediately pictured a situation and the feeling in the pit of my stomach and like a frozen kind of posture, where I'm like, gathering myself and formulating my plan in my head. And then you said unsafe. And I was like, wait, wasn't that what I was just doing? And so my mind in the
Yeah,
response had them as the same thing, even though up here I know they're different. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, because I literally pictured the same situation at work happen where something that could have potentially been threatening came through the door. And my body responded the exact same way. And it was, I don't know, I didn't see that coming actually. Because I mean, like I said, I know we all have been here, we know.
yeah,
But like, does your subconscious know? You know?
yeah. What's up, Shane?
Well, I kind of went opposite of Shannon when talking about uncomfortable. I'm thinking dealing with other humans. You're in a situation, might get a little choked up in the throat, maybe a little blush cheek, you're kind of uncomfortable social situation. And then I'm thinking safety, like immediately came, I had a cow get me down, literally physically tried to kill me this year, but I wasn't uncomfortable in the situation. Like I knew in my mind you could die right here today, but it didn't make me uncomfortable. My brain went, now how do I get out of this? So
Mhm.
that's kind of a total different. You would think and you'd panic more in that, you might die today more than I panic in the social situation.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Anyone else have
Yeah,
interesting
that goes. I was
experience?
gonna say that goes again with the familiar. So Shane's familiar with that scenario, with that something's happening.
Mhm.
It is safe, but he's familiar. Now, if he's unfamiliar with it and the say is unsafe, he's gonna have a sense like of being uncomfortable as well. The feeling to the actual safety to that. There's going to be a sense of being uncomfortable. And if you are safe, there's a sense of being comfortable
Mhm.
uh, with that. So I mean. So there's a little bit, just thinking the two aren't completely separate. They're, like they're close, so they're, you can separate them out. But to
There's
have that,
overlap. Yeah.
yeah, like when Shannon was, doing hers, like you can tell that there's overlap to the two. So how your brain can see the two,
Yeah.
yeah, they overlap. There's overlap there, like Blair said. That was something I was looking at because I was like, yeah, I get the uncomfortable and then say on the being unsafe. I'm like, I don't. Okay, so I was like uncomfortable. What do I do? I was like, just and like an unease inside and like unsafe. I'm like, okay, there's like I gotta get the heck out of here. Like an urgency. Like
Mhm.
it's heightened. That type of that flight or flight. That comes up. But discomfort, like being uncomfortable, that wasn't coming up for me. But being unsafe, that was coming up. So that's what that was.
Mhm.
You
That was
know, it recall this whole thing reminds me of a story when I was in Europe and North Africa, actually. And there were three of us actually walking around in a Medina marketplace in North Africa. And um, we were heading towards an area like an alleyway, I guess you would say. Um, okay. Oh, what's that? in Harry Potter where they do that thing where they pop and do the chimney flue stuff, and he that Diagon Alley or diagonally or whatever he mispronounces, and gets to a part of town that isn't quite that savory. Um, well, that's sort of the sense that you get looking down that alleyway. Where we were right there was fine. Where the alleyway was, you look down that alleyway and it just went, nope, I'm not going there. The other two guys went there. Actually, both of them wound up getting mugged, literally. And so I go, my spidey senses were going right there, and I go, um, I was looking at the situation and seeing how things were not the same where we were and where they wanted to go. And just by looking down there, I go, that's, I got uncomfortable, but that discomfort turned very rapidly into seeing things that were potentially unsafe. And just the expressions on a couple people's faces did not look right to me. So I wasn't going to go down there, and I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't. So anyway, it wasn't too bad, but they both got robbed. So that's part of the expectation of that, and I didn't. So yay me. Paid attention to my spidey senses, and when I was uncomfortable with that, was able to see potential safety issues. So anyway,
Colin, Christy asked me to share hers, if that's okay.
Please.
So Christy relates to like out in the open pasture with the cows. She's comfortable but yet uncomfortable. She's safe but yet unsafe because there's, if you're out walking through them on foot, there can be a mean cow. But yet when she works with them in the corral, she's not as uncomfortable and not unsafe at all because she feels there's a panel, corral fence or something to get on to get out of the way if she needs to. So she related to close proximity versus openness.
Thanks for sharing, Christy. Thanks for being with us too, even though you're not on that call. Appreciate that.
Also, for me, I've become really conscious of how like uncomfortable is more of an internal feeling, and safety is more of an external thing. I've worked in security for the past 30 years, and when thinking about safety, I went back to 2011, talking with a buddy of mine who just kicked a guy out of a bar, and the guy said he's going to come back and shoot him. And we talked about 15 minutes, and I looked at the time, got to get going. I walked half a block away, and I heard gunshots, and my immediate response was run back towards the gunshots, because I've been trained to go towards that type of thing, and it's not an automatic thing. And once I got there, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I ran towards the gunshots. I'm the biggest fucking guy on the block. I could have gotten shot, but I didn't even think about it. So for me, safety is assessing the threat and figuring out a game plan, how to minimize it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'd love to kind of piggyback on that and just share. These are my definitions. These are not, divine definitions from on high or anything. These are just the definitions that I've found really useful for me, that have helped me to parse it behaviorally and that have helped me to regulate my nervous system. So, what is safety? This is my definition again. Safety is the relative, externally verifiable level of immediate threat to your physical well-being. In case you want to steal that, safety is the relative, externally verifiable level of immediate threat to your physical well-being. And I'll put it in the chat in case you want to look at it there. And then comfort. Again, this is my definition that I use. Comfort is an internally verifiable feeling that signals an absence of perceived pressure to change one's existing identity, beliefs, or behavioral patterns. I know that's kind of a mouthful. I'll put that in the chat as well.
Mhm.
So comfort is an internally verifiable feeling that signals an absence of perceived pressure to change one's existing identity, beliefs, or behavioral patterns. And for me, as I was really trying to think through, like, what is comfort? What is safety? And I was having trouble really parsing them until I started to think about what discomfort was. And that really started to open things up a lot more for me when I was thinking about what is discomfort? What is that feeling? What is the purpose of it psychologically, evolutionarily, whatever, like thinking from that perspective. And it's like discomfort is a signal. It's telling me that my existing patterns are not working in some way, shape, or form. It's a signal. It's letting me know, just like feelings are feedback. It's a signal. It's trying to guide me towards more effective behavioral patterns for that situation, to make a change, like Blair said earlier. It's telling me something needs to change. And if it doesn't change, then there's the potential that you become unsafe. So those are the definitions that I've used that have helped me, and I'd be happy to share kind of the specific question funnel that I go through that helps me to regulate my nervous system in real time. But I'd love to hear like what are your thoughts on those definitions, or what definitions have you used that have been helpful for you?
Well, personally, I do like your definitions. They work well and they are in alignment with mine. Safety is physical and comfort is more emotional. And yeah, so there is overlap, but that overlap stuff is very relative. When we start de-smushing, like smushing safety and comfort as you did initially, and then all of a sudden you were able to do things in a way that your social anxiety shifted because you could determine the difference between was I unsafe or uncomfortable. And even though they're very close and sometimes overlapping, the reality of it is that they are different to some degree. And discerning the difference makes gives a person an opportunity to build clarity. So anyway, or at least be in control of themselves.
Yeah, and something that you said earlier, but the alleyway, you mentioned you looked down the alleyway and you felt some discomfort and like the spidey senses. And I
Yeah,
think that that ties, that is where they overlap. That's where it ties together, is when your brain is now simulating, well, what would happen if I did that? And then you feel uncomfortable. You're not actually unsafe because it's just a simulation you're running in your brain.
yep.
But you feel the discomfort because you're projecting yourself into a situation where your patterns aren't going to work for you. And if they don't work for you in that situation, something could go real bad.
Yeah, I want to say, am I projecting or am I identifying? And I have come over the years, yeah, it's spidey senses before you get to be able to articulate what it is that I'm seeing. And when you see people who are normally just down doing their thing take a quick glance when everything else is slow, I can recall that now, this, quick glance and look away. I've seen that in other situations that had potential threat to it or that wound up in issues because people are looking away, waiting like prey for you to enter their zone, and they're assessing how far away are they, what can I do, what can they do, who are they, and they make that assessment in second, well, a split second actually. So yeah. Anyway, those are the things that I go, yeah, got to be aware of that. And other people see it and they don't notice it. That's just not part of their experience lexicon as it would be, you know. So I guess having being beaten up as a kid, a lot like a picked on kid, you get to recognize those things when somebody's just about ready to start picking on you. You see these micro behaviors that they have, and you learn, okay, that's not going to be a good thing. So it's right in there. So anyway, it's just a thing. And yet other people that I've seen having similar situations didn't pick up anything from it. And I go, how could you not learn to see the signs? But they just went like right over their head. And so for me, it was a big deal. And for them, they saw it and it keeps on happening to them. So I go, well, you might want to learn.
Yeah, there's that memory helping you out again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Kicks into gear. That's for
Brent,
sure.
you looked very deep in thought, and I don't know if we addressed your question yet.
Oh, me? No, we didn't go over that. I was, well, this was earlier when Jane was talking about, being picked on and like verbally attacked, verbally. Like, so she's very, so I was like, well, it's physical safety as a question as well as emotional safety. That's like a piece there. I know sometimes, but in specific situations, there is that piece. I don't know. I remember one time Blair went over it, but it was very specific to, certain situation and like the intensity or gravity of that situation. It wasn't necessarily physical safety, but it was like internal. It was internal, like inside, but it was a safety thing. I can't remember what specifically it was that in that situation. So that was my question. It was is there an emotional safety in those times with like say you're verbally being attacked, but you're not physically being attacked or being approached on, but it's verbal, so it is coming at you. So it is an attack on you, but like you were explaining with Blair, it wasn't like there's a sense that it can escalate. Like it can get to a point where physical safety is there, but at the moment you're not physically and being harmed or that. So that was where I was, where is that, like differentiation or is there two different ones? Is there a safety for the emotional safety on that side with just, verbal things? Is is that there or is it just a like an uncomfortable being uncomfortable, like an extreme uncomfort, discomfort.
Jane wants to jump in.
Yeah.
I can clarify that to a point in that for me, it was an interpretation of intent, and the intent was to shame. So therefore, and yeah, part of that's past future loop, if you want to call it that, but at the same time, it's actual knowledge that this person or this situation is the intent is to shame. And that's usually the bullying thing is to invoke a inferior emotional sense rather than staying, aligned as peers. Does that help clarify that for you, Brent?
Maybe, yeah, I was thinking like emotional safety. So as a bullying, you're doing it over and over again to create some, and over time as the recipient, it can create some sort of harm, like emotionally. So that's
Well,
where,
at some point,
I was kind of seeing that play out. There is a safety thing because over
yeah,
time
at
that
some
can,
point,
yeah.
there, or at least for me, I had to get to a point where I says, well, I'm not inferior to this person, therefore I shouldn't feel shame. And yet that historical emotion is still there. And yet, what do I need to do for myself? So I go into the curiosity, what else can I do? Well, I, I can do I always look to Patty when you think this, I can do the typical fight, flight, or fawn, that kind of thing, or freeze. And,
Yeah, fight,
that,
flight, or freeze.
yeah. So, in my younger years, it went to fight. That was usually what usually ended up happening. And so there was physical harm at some point. It's, somewhere, in grade school, you learn that it's not going to get you anywhere, especially if the person is a lot taller than you are. And then therefore, where do you go from there? Whereas in understanding or having an interpretation of what the intent might be, okay, this person are they trying to make me feel inferior? Well, that's their insecurity. Therefore, I'm not going to play their game. Is this person trying to invoke a certain amount of power or manipulation? And of course, that was, that's also a possibility. So going into that curiosity thing, which is what mind models really help us do, is really, it's a great place to go to. But sometimes when you're in the situation, muscle memory and emotions have muscle memory too, I believe. Patty can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, that's something that having to retrain and say, okay, wait a minute, whoa, that is not necessary. These are not emotions I want to choose. And then I go into Blair's thing of choosing the right emotion and going from there. But part of it is all about intent. What is the other person's intent? And then am I going to respond or react to that intent, or am I going to choose differently?
See,
And that's
that's
what mine
all comes down to the power of choice for you.
Right.
Yeah.
But as a child, you don't, you're still learning all sorts of things. As an adult, I can do this, I can
Absolutely.
reason.
Yeah.
But as a child, it's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely.
I got something that just popped up for me, Jane, was that you were talking, it was like a response. So if you're the emotional abuse, so it's over a period of time, but if your body is responding as if it's a physical safety, the fight, flight, freeze, just based off the emotion side is then it would be a safety thing because your body is responding as if it's a physical safety, even though
Yes.
it's not actually not, but it's responding in that way. So maybe it's
Yeah,
that
I'd love to jump
specific
in on
situation.
that because that was basically
Yeah.
my lived experience, right?
Yeah.
With the anxiety, it's my comfort and safety were linked up, right? And so
Mhm.
when I would be I'd be uncomfortable, my body would respond as if it was unsafe. That's the anxiety response. It's projecting possible futures in which I am
Mhm.
unsafe, even though those aren't
Well,
real present now.
when
Yeah,
you have
Jane?
when you have a boss yelling at you, now there's a whole new response of, is my job so safety does become, oh, is my job in jeopardy, versus thing, which was my first response when a boss did yell at me about something that was his making, and I went, am I going to get canned because of this when it's what you told me to do? Kind of thing. But
Yeah.
that was also when I first time recognized in myself the freeze response
Mhm.
and was able to identify for myself, okay, this is what's happening. I'm responding as if this other whatever is happening, but I'm responding the same way. And oh my gosh, this is not necessary. But I still did it because that's what the muscle memory did. And I
Well, we keep
wasn't sure of my job. So I went from discomfort and unsafe at the same time, when just because of the person that was doing it. So
I hear
anyway,
you loud and clear there, Jane. However, you keep on going back to, well, that was the muscle memory, or that is the muscle memory. And I go, well, is it past tense or is it present tense? Because you can choose. And when
yes,
you make a choice, that's the whole magic moment when
right,
those two separate. And then you go, hold it. I may be not reacting, but I'm no longer frozen.
right.
So
But
I'm
I go
not doing
into,
much different in the real world like everybody does it, but the internal state is very different. One
Right.
is I'm in control, and the other one is they're controlling, or this is controlling me.
Right. And that was, like I said, that was the first time I became aware.
Yeah,
Didn't just notice, but I was aware
yeah,
and then could start making choices.
absolutely. You have to get to that point in order to be able to choose differently. And without that ability to choose, and if you don't know that you have a choice, if you believe, like I did for years being bullied as well, I didn't think I had a choice. But then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you perceive, hold it, I can choose how I manage this. And that changed a lot.
Mhm.
Like I was still being subjected to what they were doing, but I was starting to take control of managing how that occurred. And that was very different for me.
That moment of awareness is what I call a life-altering event.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Christy put in the chat on YouTube, reliving versus remembering. Like that's a big one too. Like what do you want to do? Relive it or just remember it and learn from it and move on. It's very difficult to learn from reliving. Like when you relive it, except to amplify it. That's one of the things that I've noticed. But remembering team tends to be you can pull lessons out and go, oh, what worked, what didn't, what might I do differently? Yeah.
I wanted to jump in and relate back to something that Shannon said a while back, which was the intellectual differentiation between things versus the actual behavioral response, subconscious level. And what I noticed in my experience of the anxiety disappearing and that response disappearing, it wasn't instantaneous. It wasn't the first time I was like, oh, am I unsafe or am I uncomfortable? That it just magically, like, poof, the anxiety response went away. It was practicing every time I'd feel stressed. This is exactly my process. I do this every day still. Um, and if I feel a stress response initiating at all, I ask myself the question, am I unsafe or am I just uncomfortable? If my brain says I'm unsafe, my next question is what can I point to? What can I point to in my immediate physical environment that is making me unsafe or threatening my physical well-being right now? And I have to point. Like I found that's actually a big thing for me. I don't know if it will be for other people, but having to physically like, where is it? I have to point to it. If I can't point to it, I go back to the first question. Am I unsafe or am I just uncomfortable? Well, I couldn't point to anything. So I guess I'm just uncomfortable. And then it's the question, and this gets back to that definition of comfort. It's like, okay, well, what is that discomfort signaling to me? What is it telling me? What's the feedback? What can I learn from this? Am I okay being uncomfortable to learn that lesson or to make a change? Because no is a valid answer. You know, if I'm like, I'm not willing to be uncomfortable right now, and then I can go a different route of, well, what might I do to alleviate the discomfort? And maybe it's not changing me. Maybe it's moving into a comfort zone, grabbing the comfort item, whatever. And you know that sometimes that's okay and effective. But that questioning process didn't magically make the stress go, or stress response disappear. It
Mhm.
was practicing that every time until that became a new part of my stress kind of cascade. Is immediately when I start to have a stress response, my brain now has that built-in circuit to go through my frontal lobe and ask those questions, and it creates a little bit of space and the opportunity to then redirect. And so the stress response doesn't continue to escalate. And instead I have the opportunity to say, no, we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
And it was building the pattern in there over weeks that
You know,
created the change.
that thing there is you sort of did a couple of mind models in there. One is the first attempt at a learning thing. You made the attempt. And that's sort of what we've been talking about. I did. I shared that. Jane shared that. You're sharing that. And then you went into the follow-up piece, which is fail fast, falling forward with all your pointing. One of the things with the pointing, though, if you point to yourself, that can become potentially hazardous because if you're the thing that makes you unsafe, you can get into a loop. And I've dealt with students and clients that have gotten into that loop. And that's not a great one because they're the unsafe thing and they're physical and they can point to it. So long as it isn't you that you're pointing to, because,
Never pointed at me before, thankfully.
well, that's good. Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
students at Life Skills College that would literally point to themselves and go, I'm the thing that's making me unsafe.
That's
So,
a really great point, because then you get into some really dangerous things with the
oh yeah.
need to eliminate the threat. However, we are at time, so I think that we'll move into wrap up. Colin, beautiful job done. Well done,
Thank you, Patty.
leading the discussion.
Mhm.
Yep, getting lots of hand claps and whoop whoop from the crowd here. So I'd like to move into wrap up. Leslie, would you like to participate in the wrap up?
Yes, thank you. Um, I've got a 9 for tonight. It is a topic that we've discussed before.
Mhm.
Interesting enough, in Banff, going up the gondola, my wife was panicky and does not like heights and actually asked if she was uncomfortable or if she was unsafe. She talked about how one of those cables is just so small and not very big. And I said, well, that's the tow cable. Look at the other one. It's 3 times the size. And so do you still feel unsafe? And, well, or uncomfortable. And we weren't even halfway up the gondola up Sulphur Mountain, and she had considerably calmed down.
Excellent.
So it
Well
was,
done, Leslie.
and coming down was even easier.
Yeah, well done.
But, yeah, it felt good to be able to practice a mind model with somebody else.
Yep.
Yes. To be
That
the
was
one leading
rewarding.
and guiding.
That was
Yes.
rewarding, especially to someone who is so important to me.
Yeah. Well
Yeah.
done.
So yeah,
Did you tell her that that was a mind model?
later on, I think I did.
Okay. Not in the moment. That's fine. I
Not in
was,
the moment. Not in the
no, it's
moment.
not useful in the moment ever. Well,
No.
not ever, but rarely in
Yeah.
the moment.
Because we talked about it the following day and told her how proud I was of her, and yeah, that it was a mind model.
Yeah, nice. Good
So
job.
yeah, it was good.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jane, would you like to participate in the wrap up?
Oh, I'm already open. Yes, well, first off, the thing I was like applauding Colin when he was talking about his process
Mm-hmm.
and actually wrote it down because I hope you don't mind. I'd like to share that with my daughter who talks
Go for it,
herself
please.
into an anxiety attack
Yeah.
instead of talking herself out of an anxiety attack. So that
Right.
might, that might help her.
I
So
hope so.
that was awesome. And hey, Leslie, way to go. Way to go.
Yep.
But yeah, I'll give it to a 9. I thought coming in like Leslie, okay, we've covered this before, no big deal. But this was a deeper dive and I really enjoyed it. I appreciated that very much.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Michael, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Absolutely. So the number I'm going to give it is an 11. And for me, part of it is because of Colin walking us through his process for how he deals with his discomfort. Because I've been kind of struggling with how to apply mind models on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So that gives me a window into the process for this particular one, as well as when he used the word of uh, running a simulation in his mind. Instead of thinking about it, processing it as running a simulation in my mind just gives me a whole new context for disassociating myself from the emotion.
Yep.
Okay, well done. Thank you very much. Shane, would you like to give us your wrap up?
For sure. Yeah, solid 9 tonight. When Brent mentioned about being conditioned to your surroundings, really hit home with the safety versus comfort. Like safety has a lesson to me personally, has a lesson sense of panic. In my line of work, I'm in situations that my brain just reacts. Like it sees the situation and just solves things without panic. Uncomfortable is more human related, more social situations that I'm not like my brain handles cows. It doesn't I can talk to people. Big crowds are not as good, but that's kind of where my is. And then Blair said there not very long ago about being in control. And that's how I relate to safety because I am in control and I feel uncomfortable when I feel others are in control. And then the mind models that I read out or wrote out was self, others, and situation. And then obviously one of my favorites is power of choice. So very good. Christy, I think, is trying to get me her wrap up here. So I'll jump in
I'll
maybe.
come back to you. I'll come back to you and get Chris.
Thank you.
So yeah, you're responding much more like a first responder or a military person. They know what to do. Those responses have been trained into them, not unfamiliar, but the lack of predictability with people makes that harder to prepare for.
Sure.
So it's interesting. Let's see, the pictures keep shifting on the screen. Brent, would you like to give us your wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just it just generated some extra thoughts for me to dig a little deeper and analyze it more. It's not just the like, oh, it's safeties, feelings, external, internal, at that level, but just to dig a little bit deeper. And that's my question, but analyzing that piece and seeing where the two can, might blend and maybe, even in extreme situations, maybe it's just an extreme discomfort, but then when that choice comes in and choosing it, well, so an ANPU, comes in, via the
Yeah.
awareness, notice of what's going on, and then choosing, which is which, and then that gets you out. You're able to, differentiate what's going on, so you can get out of that. That's where I was getting to anyway, and
Yeah.
my analyzing it. And then when Shane is there's a level of risk. Oh, there's always a level of risk involved, and the choosing to accept that, if there's a high level of risk of harm, physical harm, but you are aware, you've been in those situations before, and you choose to accept that and go ahead. So there's that risk piece as well, but you're still safe at the moment because you're not physically in harm, but you're going to accept that risk, even though that's high risk of something may happen, and it might not, but it very well may. Like I don't like physical, like football, physical sports. Yeah, I go out there. There's a high risk of severe injury, so you accept that when you go out there, and it more often than not doesn't happen, but it can. You've seen it, you've experienced personally, you've experienced it, and you've seen it. So, but you still go ahead and accept those risks and go ahead and do that. So, yeah, it's yeah, it
I also
but,
want to
yeah.
acknowledge you as a new My Model Method coach certified.
Mhm.
Thank
You are certifiable as well. We are so
Mhm.
proud of you. And what you were just running through is coach-like thinking, if you will. You were processing all of this through that coach mind.
Yeah, I
And
was trying to put myself in that another person's
yeah,
arena and then perspective and see where they're coming from and then being able to analyze it even, as it gets deeper, if it's more entrenched, and so that's what I was trying to get to. That's what. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, I would give tonight for me would based off of that a 9.5. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Shannon, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yeah. I really love the thought experiments, Colin. Those were fun. And
Right.
if you can park yourself and kind of let it unfold naturally, because it is content that I think about, you know what I mean? And that I've been thinking about for probably 6 years now. And the importance of, understanding safety versus comfort was one of the first ones, that I remember, really impacting me early on. And I found it interesting the difference between the front of my brain and the back of my brain, and things that, because we're actively learning to use these, and real life changes. And when I learned them, my life was very different than it is now, and how to practice them in a fresh way. And how I really appreciated your story about practice differentiating between the two, and retraining your brain to make a conscious choice to change that intention, and to learn that little slip into my subconscious where, my mind was picturing the same thing. And I know, and I also really thought the conditions surrounding Brent's observation about the conditions surroundings to be really interesting to think about as well, because I think each of us would have really unique high stress surroundings that we navigate really well because we've practiced them given our different lifestyles and different, you know, levels of experience in different contexts. And so to take that and create a process for myself that I can transfer to new situations. And then you're adding to your toolbox of experience and situations that your brain is like, oh, I have a file on that. I can pull that file up. This is what I do. You're just deepening your own, your own mental tools. Let's see. There was a lot of really great things to take notes on tonight. It's hard to pick a couple. I did also like your comment, discomfort is a signal that my existing patterns need to change. And that was talked about. Several different people mentioned that, Blair, at one point,
Yes.
and you as well, that if we're noticing, if we're using an ANPU to really tune into those things, it's a great source of data. I think that at some point, we all have different backgrounds and different growing ups, but sometimes children are not taught to notice. And when they do notice something, they're taught to kind of unlearn that behavior and kind of desensitize themselves as a part of growing up. And the supreme importance, like how integral noticing and awareness is to our survival and our ability to continue to pivot and grow and change. And specifically how that connects into safety versus comfort, I thought was really profound. So lots of good stuff tonight. Definitely picturing dancing on tabletops and having a grand old time. So that'll be a 9 for me tonight.
Thank you, Shannon. So Colin, your wrap up tonight?
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, 9 for me. I really enjoyed the opportunity to share my experience and what's been working and all of that. So thank you all for that. Would be a 10, but I'm extremely hot right now. Not because I'm uncomfortable, but or not because I'm internally uncomfortable, because this office is like 90 degrees.
Oh, dear.
See, we're hot. Other than that, really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Blair, how about your wrap up tonight?
Well, I was going to go back to Shane and just grab Christie's, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me.
So for me, 9, love tonight.
Can you hear that?
A lot about
Yeah.
safety versus comfort during mind model coach training. Really helps me to use a lot of the mind models as well name and labeling, a NANPU, curiosity, general versus specific. Also really helps me to use the I am versus I feel. And that it just really helps to keep me present with what am I feeling versus why am I feeling. Great tonight, even on YouTube. Thanks, you guys.
Well done.
Thanks for participating, Christy. We look forward to having you back when you're available. Okay, Blair?
Well, I really liked tonight. I very much like your thought experiments there, or simulations, whatever. I like that stuff. You know, I I, I like that being able to run simulations. Um, I like the choice of the word simulations as opposed to visualize. So it does things differently. So yeah. Anyway, similar but different. And that was it. So yeah, solid 9 for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for me, very solid 9. So enjoyed the discussion. Colin, you did that leading and guiding through that, adding some new flavor. Very, very welcome. Very well done.
Yeah.
So, taking us out, if you're on YouTube, we would really appreciate that you will like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube. We also want to remind you about the Insider Notes Guide, which is blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes. All of the historical and ongoing notes from episode 318 onward for $25 a month or $300 a year. So we really value your participation and your attendance. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Take
Bye-bye
care,
for
guys.
now.